Here's the British band who told us their name was inspired by the book Jonathan Livingston's Seagull. They dropped Jonathan Livingston, multiplied the bird, and came up with A Flock of Seagulls. It's by a group from Sweden who call themselves ABBA, A-B-B-A. The group's name was taken from the initials of their first names: Agatha, Bjorn, Benny, and Annifrid. It's by a 5-man Australian band who find that they sometimes have to explain their name AC/DC, the initials for alternating current and direct current. They say they chose it because it tells people they're electric. They call themselves Ambrosia. And according to Webster's dictionary, ambrosia was the substance which formed the food and drink of the gods, making immortal those who partook of it. Well, the 4 young men in this group say they chose the name because they'd like to establish themselves in people's minds with a sound that will also someday be immortal. And that's Love Shack by the B-52s, a group that was named not after the bomber, but after a kind of bouffant hairstyle. Here are 5 guys who took their name from a popular flea market, the Backstreet Boys, singing survey song number 3. Well, this next hit is by a British group who call themselves Bad Company. And one of the members explains that he took the name because sometimes they don't wash for weeks. I think they're putting us on. Debuting at number 33 on Casey's Top 40, that's When I See You Smile, from the band Bad English. By the way, the word English in their name, they say it comes from the expression in pool, to put English on the ball.
Now, when this group began, one of their inspirations was Buddy Holly and the Crickets, which is why they chose the name of another kind of bug, the Silver Beetle, spelled B-E-E-T-L-E. But after they'd been pounding out the rock and roll beat for a while, they changed their name to the Beatles, B-E-A-T-L-E-S.
Here's the latest hit by the Canadian band who took their name from a town in British Columbia, a town called Chilliwack. And in the Salish Indian language, it means Valley of Many Streams.
Shadow Stevens, AT40. A few weeks ago, we mentioned how 9 Stories, Lisa Loeb's backup group, came up with their name from a book by J.D. Salinger. Well, another book group is here. They got their name from The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. The main character refers to mankind as a collective soul. Ed Roland of the band says, that struck me as being very correct. We are a collective soul.
At number 83 is a song by the band made up of 2 Australians and 1 New Zealander. They formed in Melbourne, Australia, and then came to Los Angeles in search of a recording contract. Well, while they were trying to land one, they lived in a tiny little house in the Hollywood Hills. Crowds of friends came and went, and their landlady was constantly showing the house to prospective buyers. A real crowded house, and that was what they named themselves. Here now is the latest hit by the group, who was named after a girl whose father worked in the promotion department of Bell Records. It's their 10th record. They're 4th in the top 10, and it's titled, Say Has Anybody Seen My Sweet Gypsy Rose? The group, Dawn. 4 musicians who call themselves Depeche Mode. That's also the name of a fashion trade magazine in France. You see, the 7-man group first got together back in the 70s, and like every group, they looked for an unusual name. It just happened that Ray Sawyer had the strongest image in the band. He was the leader, and he wears an eye patch, not as a gimmick, but as a result of an accident. Well, the patch reminded the guys of Captain Hook. That's how that came about. Then they added a few words like, and the medicine show. So it became Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. Now in American Top 40, the first Top 40 hit by a 3-man Canadian group who took their name from Winnie the Pooh. In the 4th book of the series by A.A. Milne, the one titled When We Were Very Young, there's a poem about Teddy Bear and his meeting the King of France. And the king addresses Teddy quite formally, calls him Mr. Edward Bear. And that's the name taken by the Canadian trio who this week have the 34th best-selling record in the country. Here's a band with one of the most unusual names in the countdown, Foghat. And where did the name come from? Well, Lonesome Dave Peverett says he came across it years ago playing Scrabble. It just appeared on the board. Years later, Dave plucked it from the recesses of his memory and slapped it on his band. Here's Foghat, with a name taken from a gardening and lawn ornament store in Wayne, New Jersey. That's the band called Fountains of Wayne. It all began for him back in 1955 in the city of Newark. Francis Costelluccio formed a group called the Variatones. Then they took the group's name from a Newark bowling alley, a place called the Four Seasons. Moving up 7 notches this week is a Dutch band who say they took their name from an American movie they liked a lot. It was a 1947 picture about World War II in which Ray Milland plays a British spy and Marlene Dietrich plays a gypsy who hides him from the Nazis. The name of the movie? Golden Earrings. And the group took that title, but they felt one earring was enough. At number 19 is the first top 40 hit by that legendary band, The Grateful Dead. Came up with that name 21 years ago. Guitarist Jerry Garcia found it in the dictionary. Comes from the name of an ancient Egyptian prayer. Here's the first hit by an English-American band who named themselves after a book by English author and critic Virginia Woolf. They took part of their name from her 1931 novel, The Waves. They are Katrina and the Waves, climbing 4 notches to number 17 with Walking on Sunshine. A supergroup who got their name from drummer Keith Moon from another legendary band, The Who. It was back in the late 1960s when Keith Moon heard that the British group The Yardbirds were breaking up, and that the Yardbirds guitarist Jimmy Page was forming a new group. As the story goes, Keith Moon jokingly said he thought this new band would flop, quote, go down like a lead balloon, a Led Zeppelin, end of quote. Well, Jimmy Page turned that joke into the name for his new band. The 73rd biggest hit of the year is by a southern rock band who literally picked their name out of a pile of trash on the floor of an old rehearsal hall in Spartansburg, South Carolina. 3 years before they got there, a piano tuner named Marshall Tucker had dropped a slip of paper with his name on it, and it was kicked around in the dust on that floor for the whole 3 years. Well, this group found the paper and adopted the name. That was in the early 70s, and they've been the Marshall Tucker Band ever since. The next record is by a Scottish group who took their name out of a song by their favorite American group, The Band. You see, the band's 1968 hit The Wait begins with the line, I pulled into Nazareth, and that was all the Scottish group needed. When they heard that song, they became Nazareth. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark was the name of a song that 2 school chums in Liverpool wrote when they were 16. Andy McCluskey and Paul Humphreys decided to trash the song, but they kept the name for their 6-man band. They found their name back in 1993 after a flood covered his rehearsal studio with, well, a puddle of mud. They started singing together as a duo called the Paramounts, and they were one of the first acts to be described as blue-eyed soul. That is, white artists doing soulful music. It was black music fans one night who gave the duo their name, calling their sound Righteous, and they became the Righteous Brothers. Now the hit by a 6-member vocal and instrumental group that got its name from a popular column in the magazine Mechanics Illustrated. The column was called Ask Rufus, and that's the name the group decided to use when they first got together in Chicago back in 1967. But as their popularity grew, people in the Chicago area dropped the word Ask from their name and started calling them just Rufus. Now, the biggest rap act to hit the pop chart, the trio called Run DMC. They're Joseph Simmons, Darryl McDaniels, and Jason Mizell. Joseph Simmons got his nickname Run because he says he could run off at the mouth. And Darryl McDaniels initialed his name DMC. Here's a hit by an Australian duo that took its name from an Anne Rice novel, a novel about vampires. But the duo has a lighter, more wholesome image than that of the vampire Lestat. Here's their #1 smash from 1998, Truly, Madly, Deeply, Savage Garden. The English band Scritti Politti, they say their name means political writing. Storming in at number 19 is a band that got its name from something football commentator and former coach Mike Ditka was fond of saying, quote, these guys are really playing smash mouth football, unquote. Here's a band who say they got the idea for their name when a few of the band's members recalled seeing a German ballet company out on tour. A ballet company from a community at the west end of Berlin called Spandau. It caught the fancy of this English group, so they called themselves Spandau Ballet. You know, number 34 in the countdown is by a group who named themselves after a con man. A stargazing, swashbuckling phony of a character from Richard Nash's play, The Rainmaker. Here is Starbuck. The song at number 56 is by the Chicago band who took their name from a river, the river Styx in Greek mythology. That's the river that the souls of sinners were ferried across on their way to Hades. This next song is by a band from New York City, a band who took their name from an expression in TV journalism that describes newsmen such as Peter Jennings, Tom Brokaw, and Dan Rather. They're talking heads, a TV term that means a camera shot that frames only the person's head and shoulders. The 84th most popular song of 1985 is by the English trio who named themselves after some comic strip characters. The comic strip is French, and the characters are twin brothers, a pair of bumbling detectives called the Thompson Twins. Here's the English band with the Outer Space Connection, named for a character on Star Trek, from an episode called Amok Time. The band is T'Pau, and their song is Heart and Soul. Here's that trio from Texas who've said, maybe seriously, that when they were first choosing a name for the group, they aimed at a name that would give their records a certain position on the counters in the record stores. Records are almost always arranged alphabetically, and they wanted theirs to be the last name a shopper would see. So here they are, last in the alphabet. At number 14 this week in the countdown, ZZ Top with Legs.